Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's roundtable, Together to Net Zero. My name is Diana Quesada. I'm Senior Officer at the Global Green Growth Institute, and I will be the moderator for today's roundtable. So today's event, it's part of a series of climate talks and net zero events, which is part of the Blue Skies and Net Zero 2050 campaign from the Global Green Growth Institute. And this roundtable will have two sessions, both of which aim to share experiences and lessons learned on how we can support the achievement of net zero targets in South Korea and in other countries, especially developing countries. So to kickstart this roundtable, I would like to welcome Ms. Helena McLeod, Deputy Director of the Global Green Growth Institute, to provide some opening remarks.
Thank you. It is wonderful to be here. I welcome everybody in the room and online. I particularly want to welcome Dr. Yu, who I have been looking forward to meet for so long, since I arrived in Korea last year, and we have at last got to meet for this event. It's a very special day. So we're celebrating our International Day of Clean Air, something that we all absolutely need. Just take a breath. And what are you breathing in? It's something that we do all the time unconsciously. But if that air is not clean, it affects our health. And obviously, in terms of global warming, it affects the whole planet. So in terms of the challenges that the world's facing at the minute, we can look at all the difficulties, and every morning I put the news on and I see, well, today it was floods in Brazil. We've had wildfires in Greece this week and in different countries. It's traumatic. We have famine caused by the global warming. So there's many things that we can focus on being sad. But I also look at the opportunities. And I think one thing that unites us is our skies. And we can celebrate the fact that we are actually all the same. We are all human. So we focus so much on the differences between us, on what countries we come from, or what religions we have, or which gender we have. At the end of the day, we're all human, and we are equally affected by what is going on in the world today. Nobody can escape it. And so that need for collaboration is greater than ever before. Now, there is so much to celebrate, and I always look at the excitement and the opportunity in life, and not least in what we work on. We have so many solutions for the challenges that we're being faced with today. I'm so excited that last year the GGGI enabled the largest floating solar PV initiative in the world for 800 megawatts. That's something that showed the market it's possible at scale, and that's being replicated in India now. I'm so excited that this year we've also supported the first resilience bond globally. That was in Mexico, and that enables bond money to be raised, to be channeled to projects that make a difference to what we're talking about today. Very powerful mechanisms to amplify climate finance. I'm also excited by the work that we're doing on e-mobility. So we're going to be supporting the first e-buses in Jordan. We've already supported the first e-buses in Mexico. In Nepal, it's one of the largest scale-ups of e-buses in the region. There's so much to celebrate. And I'm also really excited that we've got so many youth attending the session today, because you are going to be the champions of driving this forward so quickly. You think much faster than we do. I think the speed with which people think is increasing as new generations come through. And the learning that we can have from all of the internet and the ways we exchange information, the speed we can receive information is so much quicker. We have 7 years left, but I think we can really accelerate the green growth transition and get those skies much bluer and cleaner. And I want to just recognise again our special guest today and the work that the Climate Change Centre is doing and the collaboration that we have as two organisations dedicated and in alignment, and the focus on knowledge. And that is part of what this series of forums is about, is just celebrating that knowledge, sharing that knowledge, and being open to new ideas that drive us closer to the solutions that the world needs. So thank you for coming today, and thank you very much for your special words now. Thank you.
Thanks, Helena, for these opening remarks. I would also like to welcome and introduce Dr. Sook Yo. She is the chairperson of the board of Climate Change Center in South Korea and the honorary research scientist of Korean Institute of Science and Technology. She also takes a role of the president of Korean Biofuel Forum and has been joining as a member of Korean Academy of Environmental Science and the National Academy of Engineering of Korea. Now she would provide some welcoming words. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sook, and I'm the chairperson of the Climate Change Center, as she introduced. Commemorating 4th International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies, I'd like to express my gratitude and welcome you all to the Blue Skies in 2050 Net Zero campaign roundtable today. I would also like to acknowledge Helena McLeod, GGGI's Deputy Director, for co-hosting this event. In addition, I'd like to salute all of our campaign supporters, including the European Chamber of Commerce in Korea, ECCK. In addition, I'm extremely grateful to all of the experts from public, private, and academic sectors, as well as the young leaders who will facilitate meaningful discussions at today's roundtable. This is the third event following the introduction of the 2020 Blue Skies and 2050 Net Zero campaign. At the time of the inauguration, concepts such as carbon neutrality and net zero were not familiar with us. So it is astounding how much progress we have made collectively over the past 3 years. The government of the Republic of Korea has made a global commitment to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, and the Framework Act on Carbon Neutrality and Green Growth codifies this goal. National Plan for Carbon Neutrality and Green Growth, the highest level legally binding plan, was established in last March. These actions have paved the way for the execution of a vision for a sustainable and inclusive future by laying the framework for its implementation. Additionally, the private sector is responding positively to this initiative. In accordance with the global trends, investor and consumer demands, industries are improving their ESG management by managing supply chains and making proactive technological investments. They are modifying their business portfolios in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Each industry is working to establish and implement its own carbon neutrality roadmap. Unquestionably, civil society has always been the driving force behind these initiatives. Citizens living in a time of climate crisis persistently demand and implement preventative measures influencing both government and business practices. We, the Climate Change Center, also functions as a bridge between the public and private sectors, fostering a broad societal consensus on achieving carbon neutrality. Moreover, as an independent think tank, we are devising and implementing a number of carbon neutrality related strategies. Nevertheless, the present situation is dire. There are new expressions such as global boiling to characterize how severe the climate crisis has become. And the world is experiencing frequent forest fires, heat waves, excessive rainfalls, and flooding, etc., as Helena mentioned. Now that the climate crisis has reached a point where it affects our daily existence, it is felt by all. The IPCC Sixth Assessment Report, published in March, issued a warning that the average global temperature has risen by 1.1 degrees Celsius since pre-industrial era. In addition, the time required to attain the critical threshold of 1.5 degrees of warming is much shorter than previously estimated. It emphasized the significance of not only reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but also adapting to climates that are rapidly changing. Obtaining carbon neutrality by 2050 is not an easy task, ladies and gentlemen. Nevertheless, it is evident that if we do not act immediately, the lives of future generations will become even more difficult. In this regard, I believe that each and every one of you present here today represents the hope of our era. We have policymakers and business leaders from various countries, as well as young leaders convening to explore methods of collaboration for climate response and carbon neutrality. Now is the time to look back and see how well we've done with the plans and promises we've made so far. We need to look at what went wrong and what can be done to make sure no one is left behind. Most importantly, we cannot lose our enthusiasm and passion for attaining carbon neutrality. With the knowledge that the next 10 years will shape our future, and if everyone in our society works toward carbon neutrality with the same goal in mind, we can finally get there. We can solve the biggest problem facing humanity, which is the climate disaster, and set the stage for a good future. Please join us in attaining carbon neutrality by 2050 and a sustainable future for the entire human race as represented by the blue sky. I trust that the roundtable discussions held today will continue to be fruitful and that the discussions held today will flourish at the upcoming COP28 in Dubai. Thank you very much. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Dr. Young, for these introductory words. And thank you, Helena, also for highlighting the importance of speed action towards decarbonizing the economy and reaching these net zero emission targets. So now I would like to invite the speakers of the first session to the table so we can start the first discussion. Yeah, I mean, you can go. So thank you to all the speakers of today and all the panelists. So as mentioned earlier, this roundtable will have two sessions. On the first session, we will discuss how to incentivize policymakers, investors, and the private sector to support the transition towards net zero targets. And we will also discuss which are the challenges and opportunities for scaling up green investments that can support the achievement of these net zero targets. We will hear three different perspectives and we will have three presentations. The first one will talk about carbon markets and how these carbon markets can incentivize the decarbonization of the most polluting industries. Then we will deep dive a little bit into a specific example, and we will hear from the perspective of a research, more academic angle on how we can decarbonize the steel industry in South Korea. And finally, we will hear the perspective from the financial sector, and we will hear how we can increase or scale up green investments towards decarbonizing the Korean economy and what are the challenges to do so. So I would like to give the floor to Mark Hopkins first, associate at the Carbon Pricing Unit at the Global Green Growth Institute. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Deanna, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you also to Helena and Dr. Yu for your opening remarks. So yeah, I'm going to talk about international carbon markets in the context of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. And you know, this is as well in the context of how this can support the global transition to net zero. So I think the most important role when we talk about carbon markets is that they provide finance, and a means to channel that finance towards activities that reduce emissions, so mitigation activities. This slide here just illustrates at a high level what the carbon project cycle looks like. And this will be relevant when I talk about Article 6 in a couple of slides. So on the far left, we have different types of potential mitigation activities that generate emission reductions. So this can cover sectors such as energy, transport, or waste. In the middle, we have carbon crediting mechanisms. So the role of crediting mechanisms is to develop methodologies for calculating emission reductions, to register projects, and then to issue credits once those projects have generated emission reductions that are independently verified. So as you can see, there are many types of mechanisms. There's going to be an Article 6.4 mechanism that's not yet operational. There are independent mechanisms such as Gold Standard or Vera. There are bilateral mechanisms such as Japan's joint crediting mechanism, as well as national mechanisms that some countries establish. So that includes countries such as Thailand or Australia. And then finally, on the far right, there are different sources of demand for carbon credits. So this can include countries that are looking to use credits generated in another country towards their NDC. These might be corporates that are looking to use credits to make some sort of voluntary offsetting claim. It could be international airlines looking to meet their compliance obligations under the CORSIA scheme. They might be entities within a domestic market, or it could be others that are looking to make some sort of non-offsetting related contribution claim. In terms of what's happening now in carbon markets, I think the key trend is that there's been very rapid growth in recent years. And that's visible here in the recent spike in issuances. And that's largely driven by demand from corporates looking to purchase for voluntary purposes. So the key message, I think, is that carbon markets are very much a growing source of finance for mitigation activities. At the same time, though, there are growing concerns. And these concerns relate both to the quality of credits and also concerns related to the use of credits. So these criticisms relate, for example, to corporates that are making offsetting claims without necessarily focusing on reducing emissions within their internal operations. So these are obviously very real risks that threaten to undermine progress towards net zero. In this context, I would like to kind of talk about Article 6 and how this provides a framework that can cover international carbon markets. And our view in the carbon pricing unit at GGGI is that because Article 6 allows for stronger government oversight, Article 6 can help to build carbon markets with a higher level of integrity and address some of those concerns and risks that I was talking about on the previous slide. I think especially those related to the quality of credits. Just to explain very quickly how this works, Article 6, how it provides this framework. What it basically is an accounting and reporting framework. So this requires the host country, so that's the country where these projects take place. It requires them to approve mitigation activities. In terms of approving mitigation activities, the fundamental action is authorization. So this authorization creates Article 6 units, which are called ITMOs, or Internationally Transferred Mitigation Outcomes. So you can see here on the far left, again, that there are various sources of ITMOs. So these can be issued by various crediting mechanisms. What matters then in the context of Article 6 is whether these credits are authorized or not. Authorization also then impacts what buyers can do with these credits. So that includes the types of claims that they make. That's because when a host country authorizes ITMOs, it authorizes for a specific use. So this could be, for example, authorizing a country to use those ITMOs to meet its own NDC, or it could authorize for other uses, such as voluntary offsetting. And I think a nice example here is the Swedish government, for example, who are looking to purchase ITMOs not to reach or to meet their NDC, but to go beyond their NDC and reach net zero by 2045. Another important point as well is that ITMO use is not just confined to governments. So we think there's likely to be growing demand from the private sector. And that I think will especially grow as guidance on the types of claims that corporates can make evolves. And then when we talk about authorization, just as a kind of final point, what this means in practice is that when ITMOs are transferred internationally, the host country has to add back the amount that's transferred to the emissions balance that it reports to the UNFCCC. So this is basically a form of double entry bookkeeping to prevent the double counting of emission reductions. The key risk then for countries is that they authorize too many ITMOs and then don't have enough left over in their country to meet their own NDC targets. And helping host countries to put in place the frameworks and strategies to manage that risk is a big part of what we're doing at GGGI. And yes, and this has been covered very quickly, so I just wanted to say as well, if you're looking to learn more about our work in this space, there's a few reports and shorter briefs that we've recently published, so please feel free to go to our website and check them out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark, for providing us with this very quick overview of how the international framework of carbon markets work and how Article 6 has been developing. This is a very useful tool that has been quickly implemented since the last COPs. And now we would like to hear from Heather Lee, the lead of the steel team from Solutions for Our Climate. And she will talk about more of how we can decarbonize the steel sector. Thank you. Heather, the floor is yours.
I think we're setting up. Yes, so good afternoon. Let's see. It's my great pleasure to be here, and I think it's being set up at the moment, so I don't have my slides yet. Yes, so I am Heather Lee, and I'm the steel lead of Solutions for Our Climate. And today I will be, okay, yes. So today I will be focusing on the steel industry in Korea and its impacts and also how we can tackle it to be a bit more better and a bit more greener. So before going on, I would like to give a short overview of our organization. So some of you may have heard of it and some of you may have not. But SFOC, Solutions for Our Climate, is an international climate advocacy organization founded in, 2016. We are dedicated to aligning our mission trajectories with the goals of the Paris Agreement. We leverage our extensive networks and diverse talent to enable the development of renewables and accelerate industrial decarbonization. Yes, so we have a lot of groups and teams here, and currently our steel team is under the industry team, which we also focus on methane and shipping. So what kind of work do? We basically push the government to have more feasible policies, and at the same time, we push corporates to be more ambitious in their carbon neutrality goals. So the Korean steel industry and health impacts, specifically air pollution. So I'm sure everyone here is very much well aware that climate change is a grave issue in our lives. And among its various reasons and causes, the most primary reason is CO2 emission. When it comes to CO2 emissions, we can now hustle up to high reliance and dependence on fossil fuels. Some might say, so what does it have anything to do with steel? Well, why are you talking about steel? But as you can see in the photo on the bottom, the chimney there is one of the steel plants of POSCO. And it's constantly puffing up pollutants, including CO2 and also nitrogen oxide. So steel is one of the most carbon intensive sectors within our industry in Korea as well and globally. Korea's number 1 and 2 highest CO2 emitters are both steel makers, namely POSCO and Hyundai Steel. So why is this? It's because the source of energy that they use to operate these steel plants is operated by coal. So you can see the map here. And as I mentioned in my previous slide, the stats of the mega steel plants are here in Korea. So this is a bit in Korean, sorry for that. When you think of Korea and air pollution, the first thing that pops up is fine dust, since it always comes out in the news, and yellow dust coming from neighboring countries. But our many of the daily commitments, such as 자동차 요일제, we have, but unfortunately it was found that fine dust decreased to about 40% due to the shutdown, sorry about that. But unfortunately, it was found that fine dust decreased by about 40% due to the shutdown of coal plants. But by this number, we can't say that it was a shutdown of coal steel plants, but it's a clear fact and a clear-cut example that this coal-generated energy power is very detrimental to our air quality, and not just that, but in general, climate change as well. So this is a very hardcore cover of a report that we published, but we published this report to draw attention, and it actually really does draw attention. You don't want to have this hanging around in the subway or so, but it draws attention from the steel industry at a national level, and it actually gives a consolidated message for the steel industry on the impacts of the truth behind the blast furnace pollutions, the air pollutions that we're talking about today. And we also wanted to make an issue saying that carbon neutrality is necessary not only for carbon emission reductions, but also very closely related to our health as well. So it's supposed to have sound, but it doesn't, but I can shortly explain it in Korean. So based on the report, we have made a short clip, which is on our YouTube website. But this clip basically says that this person in the slide is a resident of Ondong village, which is located very closely nearby a steel mill. He is saying that just at least 1 year, he would like to live in a place with clean air. Every day, his car is covered with debris that has been blown from the steel facilities. And his vegetable garden is filthy on the bottom with steel dust. And twice a day, he has this really weird, funky smell that he has, like all the residents in his village smells this weird something that they cannot explain in words, but they assume that it's coming from the steel plant. But as you know, he and other residents are very old, and they have been living in this village for their whole lives. And telling them to simply, oh, you can move to another village with clean air, that actually is not feasible for them at all. So based on the report that I just mentioned, it's not just air pollution, but it's extended to other diseases and premature death. So we have made a comparative analysis under 3 scenarios, which is the current BAU and the net zero 2050, and with facility improvements of the blast furnace. Yes. So you can see here that if we have our current policy, meaning that we don't have any modification of the emission controls, it will be that number on the left hand. And if we do have some kind of emission efficient modification of the facilities, we can at least reduce the numbers of the premature deaths and also economic costs as well. So how can we tackle this? How do we have to deal with decarbonizing this steel industry? So I think the steel industry is not just a simple issue of transitioning its facility itself, but it's also very related to the NDCs of Korea and the net zero plans of the countries. So we need to come upon some kind of solutions to deal with it, to actually breathe some kind of clean air. So the challenge we see here is the extension of the blast furnace life cycle. So to reach our goal of steel decarbonization and net zero, one of the main challenges is this, as you see in the pictures. As almost half the number of the global mega steel plants are located in Korea, so it's not quite an easy job to do. So there are globally in the whole world 15 mega blast furnaces, but 40% of them are located in Korea, which is quite a high number compared to our population. And especially when it comes to extending the life cycles of this, it's very difficult to ask these corporates or companies to shut it down because these a single blast furnace costs millions and millions of dollars. So another challenge that we see is our primary high use of coal for the blast furnace fuels. So as you can see, there was a slight tilt there, but that was because of Corona. So it's going back up. So another solution. Now we come to the solutions. Yes. The first solution that we see for this transition to be accelerated and the steel industry to be more cleaner and greener, we see it as the expansion of research and development funds for the low carbon steel facilities. And this is a cover of the report that we published, but the money has to be going to hydrogen DRI, and hydrogen injected steel making. This is, I guess I may need another session to deeply explain on this. I can go on for hours to explain on this, but you can see in the brief that basically compared to other countries, our government puts in 1/10 of the money on these kind of research. So 1/10 of Japan, Germany, and Sweden, to name a few, but these countries also have the other 60% of the blast furnaces. So, but these countries are actually doing something and putting in a lot of money to make the effort to go to net zero and green steelmaking facilities. But at the moment, Korea doesn't seem to have much of an interest in accelerating the process. So there are some efforts that we see, which is quite positive. And one of the solutions, another one, could be creating a demand market for the green steel, so-called green public procurement. So based on the market mechanism, if there is a wider demand, obviously the market itself, the steel makers will try to change their products, whether they like it or not. So as you see in this slide, there are two legislations. These are important in expanding the uptake of low carbon materials in construction by enhancing disclosure of carbon footprint, which would make these steel makers, the consumers of the steel, ask for green steel, since they have to actually indicate how much carbon footprints they have made through this building or through this product. So these kind of acts are not set, but some of the legislators are trying to push this through. Yes, and another issue would be, so lastly, I would like to mention the importance of energy transition. As at the end of the day, if we don't reach this or make some kind of transition here, the whole life cycle will lose its meaning. When we say facility change, this means the change of energy source. So using renewables in place of coal. However, at the moment, the renewables in the Korean market is very bleak. I'm sure that everyone here are very much well aware of that. And it's also unstable. And as it is run by just a single dominant state-owned company, it has a lot of difficulties as well. So if we do diversify the players within this energy market, it may at least accelerate and widen the options for companies like steelmakers to actually make the effort and make the jump. So to come to the conclusions, I'm sure that not a lot of people are quite interested in steel, and steel seems as if it's a very some kind of other story that another person would be talking about, not my family or my neighbors. But steel is very essential, even in the computers here, even in the microphones here, we do use a lot of steel. And it's in various aspects, not just constructions, but in our kitchen appliance as well. So in order to facilitate a transition to net zero emissions, it is vital for our industry, especially, as I mentioned, steel producers and the consumers as well, investors, the government, and civil society as ourselves to get on board. So we see that policy support must go hand in hand with strong signals coming from the market and the demand side to accelerate the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. It's always nice to hear from organizations and institutions that actually use research to push the government to be more ambitious, especially knowing South Korea, they have very already ambitious climate neutrality policy and targets. So it's always good to know what else they can do. And to hear the challenges that Korea has to basically phase out their industry. Now, let's hear a little bit on how South Korea can ramp up their green investments towards new technologies for the industry and basically for the renewable energy sector that can overcome some of the challenges that Heather just mentioned. So I would like to give the floor to Louis Kim, Director of Sustainability Finance at ING. Louis, the floor is yours.
have a lot of opportunity to mingle with, these research focused, NGOs and think tanks. So for me, it's a lot of learning catch up as well. And today I want to just talk about what conventional bankers are playing the role for this energy transition. That's something I don't think not many people actually talk about. So before I talk about the role of bank, I think this is mostly the repeat slide of Dr. Yu already mentioned about climate change and climate crisis. But I want to emphasize that we should admit that this kind of carbon emission and this kind of climate crisis is man-made. You can actually sort of see from this graph that you see those small carbon emissions since 1800. That's when the Industrial Revolution started. So you can't say no. There is something kind of natural thing happened. Also, we should accept our responsibility to resolve these issues. And two other key things I want to talk about is especially about the terminology. You might hear about climate change, but frequently we are talking about climate crisis now. So from change to crisis, you can actually see those kind of negative feeling attached to this. And the other thing is about global warming to boiling. I don't want to talk about this because today is quite boiling as well. It's not acceptable in September, especially since we already passed the start of autumn in Korea and those 24 seasons. So as you can clearly see that every year you can experience more heat coming up. And I can't imagine people in India or some other areas where their normal temperature is much higher than Korea, how they can survive, especially without air conditioning and considering their lower GDP as well. So it must be real disaster for them to survive day-to-day life. So from here, I want to talk about what banks and the financial institutions, they are normally considered as the greedy people, always chasing money, how we can actually support net zero. So if you look at those right graph, that's not prepared by me, it's from McKinsey, one of those, the other famous company. So we need at least 6.4 billion USD every year for the next 30 years to achieve low carbon emission technology. And among those money, 55% should come from private investors. So you cannot achieve this goal without the money from those wealthy people. So even within those private investors, you can see banks are more than 50%. So we need to actually deliver about 2.6 trillion USD every year for this net zero to be achieved. So that's why as a banker, we strongly believe that we have critical role to play in this journey. Then I just want to briefly talk about what is sustainable finance. That's the terminology we normally use in financial industry. So this is just like the combination of sustainability with traditional finance. So every time you have loan, previously we just talk about risk and return, whether this person will go bankrupt, whether we can earn 5% or 6%. But from now on, we need to consider biodiversity, carbon emission, and some other social effects as well when you actually make those investment decisions. And the reason why we are doing this is we try to promote those long-term investment in sustainability activities such as renewables and green steel and some other areas as well. So this is the terminology, and the European Union or the bank has this kind of official term that we need to take the ESG as the consideration and critical factor when you consider financial decision. Yeah. So this is the update on sustainable finance market globally. So we have some kind of categorization, what would be considered as sustainable finance, not just finance. So for example, if we lend money to company and they build renewable project, we will consider this as green loan. And this will be captured as sustainable finance. And you can actually see the rapid increase from 2019 to 2021. And last year was a little bit of backward, and it was mainly because of credit condition and interest rate hike. So even traditional loan market was a bit slow. And this year we actually see a little bit more catch up. And the other thing I want to emphasize is that if you can see those those kind of circle right there. Obviously, Europe is the leader in this field, but APEC is even bigger than America for sustainable finance. You can't imagine this kind of graph for the other investment because you know that in America there is still anti-ESG and Republican and Democrats. It's much more complicated than APEC. So we have a lot of law as a region for this sustainable finance. And from here, I just want to talk about what we are doing in everyday life as a bank. So this is more ING specific. So by the way, ING is the Dutch bank. So it's not Korean bank, but they have branch in Korea. So I think we've been here maybe more than 30, 40 years in Korea, but we normally only do banking for corporate. That's why not many people know ING. We used to have insurance. So many people consider ING as like insurance company, but we sold down to the other company. So it's more about wholesale banking. So our like typical customer would be like Costco, Hyundai Steel, Samsung, Hyundai. So those are the typical customers. So we, for ING, this kind of sustainability ESG is not a new term. We started to publish our report back in 1996. I was quite curious about why Dutch Bank was pioneer in this field, and I did my own research before I joined the bank. One reason is their own climate, and their cultural and regional reason, because they have a lot of issues relating to climate change. So they can be affected by climate change a lot economically. That's why they became more pioneer on this field. So you always need some kind of motivation to be proactive on certain area. So that's why ING became pioneer in the banking industry. So we were the first bank to analyze our loan portfolio. So every loan we give it to the customer, we analyze how much carbon emission, what kind of industry, what is client's target. So we were the first bank to actually measure and manage and collect, and we disclose climate report annually. So you can actually see from ING's website. So for us as a bank, we focusing on climate. I'm sure we will change our focus to maybe other agendas such as biodiversity or some other circular economy. For now, it's mainly more about carbon emission reduction because that's our critical agenda. And we really want to collaborate our knowledge and specialty with clients. And we understand that especially for some industries such as steel, we don't have enough technological skill compared to the client. So there is kind of asymmetrical information bias, but we have more financial skills and we know what the other players are doing in the market. That's why we are continuously talking to them and advising them and trying to structure a banking product that can actually achieve net zero as well. That's one of our main goals. So what we are doing as a bank, we actually have 3 key pillars for sustainability. First one is called ENS, it's called Environmental and Social Risk Management. We have a dedicated team only looking at this risk. So whenever you have any project, they are looking at this risk from environmental and social aspects. So for example, if you have factory manufactured in Myanmar, we are thinking about human rights. What will be the condition of the labor? If we have any kind of factory, maybe based in some South America, we are thinking about deforestation in some other areas as well. And we have a lot of lists of saying no. It's more like no list. So if we can't pass environmental and social list, we can't even go to the deal stage. So this is like first gate for us, like kind of goalkeeper for ING, trying to prevent those greenwashing and trying to prevent those negative impact. And the second stage is in-house sustainability. So we are calculating and measuring our scope 1 and 2 and 3 emissions. So for today, actually ING Bank is just around there. It's about 20-minute walk. And if I take a bus or car, it's about 10 minutes. I decide to just take a walk. Sometimes we are joking around whether you take a bus or whether you take a walk, which one will be lower emissions. It's just kind of a sustainable finance joke within our team. So I managed to take a walk today. And the other thing that I'm actually doing every day is the third one, so sustainable finance team. This is a relatively new area. There's no Korean bank doing this kind of job at the moment. So this is a kind of specialist in finance and as well as sustainability. So what we are doing is we are structuring financial products that can help those net zero. So for example, green loan, social loan, whether the loan proceed will go to the eligible project under EU taxonomy, even Korean taxonomy, they disclosed last year as well. So that's our main role. And we put it into our legal contract for the loan contract. So for those borrowers, they need to report annually where they actually put their money in. So that's our main job. And we have quantitative target for sustainable finance volume. By 2025, we committed to end new coal and oil gas financing already, and we are expanding to this midstream of energy sector as well. We previously focusing on those upstream, and we are now expanding. And we have 9 sectors specifically. That's a high emitting sector, including steel, shipping, energy, and some other area as well. So we are calculating every loan that's under those sectors, and we are planning to add a little bit more sectors as well. So I just want to quickly introduce this new kind of item. This is called sustainability linked loan. This is part of sustainable finance product. This is kind of simple, but it's innovative as well. So for example, if you have one client, corporate client, they don't have any specific project that's green, but they want to actually enhance their sustainability. What we are doing is we are designing the margin. So like if you go to bank and you have minus deposit, you have your rate like 5%, 6%, you have standard rate. But after 1 year, if you achieve your ESG target, we lower the margin for the next year. If you don't achieve, we increase the margin. So it's like annual basis of margin adjustment, trying to give them the incentive and also kind of like signaling effect to the market as well. So that's what we do every day. And I just want to finish this talk by talking about challenges and opportunities. So this is just the Google trend graph for ESG search. So if you put ESG as a keyword and looking at global and Korea, you can actually see that Korea was not interested in ESG at all until 2021. But since then, we are quickly catching up with global market and in aligning as well. This is kind of the beauty of Korean market. Once you have some interest, you are really quick to catch. But what I'm worrying about is that we are a little bit quick to lose the interest as well. So if you're looking at the table, especially 2023, the score is 82 for worldwide and 70 for South Korea. So I'm a little bit worried about this trend. Maybe we are busy with other things. And the second one I want to emphasize is that there are many obstacles we need to consider in Korean market, but the major one is renewables. We are the lowest among OECD, even lower than China and lower than Japan of using renewables as electric generation. And we are only 5%. And worse, we are mainly focusing on solar at the moment. We don't utilize wind a lot as well. So we are tilting to one side as well. And since you know that property price is extremely high in Korea, we can't find a lot of those free parking lot that we can put those solar panel and for our sea is normally deeper than those European sea. So it costs more money to put those offshore wind as well. So that's something only technology can help to improve. That's why I'm saying that this is kind of opportunity for Korea as well, because we have enough technology, we have enough young, talented people to tackle this problem as well. And if you tackle, you can actually create new job, because sustainable finance for me is kind of new job. I'm the only person in Korea doing this work, even within banks, including domestic and international bank. And I used to be the fund manager. So I switched from there to ESG because I liked it. So you can actually create a new career by doing this. So The last slide, I just want to talk about this, what we can actually support and grow together in this new world. So for me, more stronger and stringent regulation and more flexible regulation at the same time is critical, because the reason why not many companies put a lot of money on this technology is that they don't even know what will be happening in 3 to 5 years. If government change the policy, they might lose all the money. And normally those time span is more than 10 to 20 years. So we need some kind of clear vision for the company. They can assure that this kind of investment at least will not result in deficit for them as well. So this is one thing I want to emphasize. And the second one is improving a lot is about those ESG data and disclosure. Without data, you cannot analyze and you cannot be relying on their action as well. So with ISSB and those kind of ESG disclosure rules worldwide, I think this can be improved a lot. And the third one is stronger stakeholder engagement. So this kind of activity today is really good example for those stakeholder engagement, because we can exchange our ideas and I can learn something from GGGI and Solution for Climate as well. Actually, I'm using their research material a lot for my own study. And the last one that's most difficult for me and for everyone is how we can actually align our long-term objective to everyday operation. Because it's not easy. When you think about 2050, for some elder generation, they sometimes jokingly say, I will not be there. So for younger generation, it still looks quite far away. So you can't actually convert those long kind of mission to your daily life operation. That's something nobody will teach you. That's something you need to create yourself. So because I believe that everyone has some small role to actually achieve the net zero. So that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Louise, for giving us this overview of how big the climate finance gap is. 2.6 billion per year, it's not a small number. And linking it with Mark's presentation, potentially the carbon markets can be a very good tool to close part of this financing gap. It's interesting to see how a stakeholder engagement and the exchange between the academic and international organizations can actually help increase the ambition and facilitate green investments. And yeah, it was also interesting to hear that Korean banks, they have a big opportunity to actually develop these new sustainable tools or products for increasing investments in low carbon emissions activities. So with that, I would like to open the floor if there are any questions here in the room or online for our panelists. Helena, yep.
You have strict ESG standards. I just wanted to know, firstly, whether that makes it difficult for you to find people to lend money to, because they can go to other people. So that was one question. And then the second question was around, so we do a lot of bond market globally, and we're green bond.
Yeah.
So we are often the first to work with governments and sometimes the private sector banks as well in different countries. So it's still new to many different countries. What I wanted to know, in your opinion, is would it help to have a global target on how much of the bond market should be made green? Or is that not a good thing because the risk of greenwashing is too high?
Okay, so for the first question, it's true because we are still a bank, like we are still private company trying to maximize our profit in this way. So sometimes we say no to client who doesn't have a traditional plan to exit coal, and that client can find another banks easily. So we lose the deal. But that's something we need to accept as well. And interestingly, there are some other clients who love our approach. because they feel like they are kind of selected as the best kind of practice company in the industry. So that's the one of the thing I'm trying to appeal to the client. If you are doing this sustainable finance with ING is relatively strict in this area, then you can actually, it kind of indirectly verify that you have those global standards in your system. So that's something I'm trying to persuade them. It doesn't work 100%, but it sometimes works and it's getting better. The winning chance is getting better. So that's all. And the other thing is that we are also working quite closely with domestic banks, those 4 major banks as well, because we are not competitors. We don't lend money to SMEs in Korea. And we typically lend money to Korean conglomerate having plants in Europe or in US. So because we are lending money in Euro or USD, that's our expertise. So we can be collaborating with domestic banks and exchanging ideas as well. That's one good point as well. And the second question on those green bonds. So last year, so Korean paper is the Korean company issuing non-Korean won bond. So in offshore market like USD bond and Euro bond, about 50% was actually ESG bond. So green bond and social bond as well. And in Korea, social bond is quite big market because of those housing finance they are issuing in social bond, helping low to medium income housing. And because of COVID-19, there was many credit card company and other financial institutions doing social bond as well to help those people in hardship as well. So about those having some kind of target globally, I think it has goods and bads as well. So I think it would be good if we have target, at least it will show issuers this is the right direction you need to go. But at the same time, there are still some companies, they don't have any internal target, internal system or anything else. So then they will just try to issue in easier way, So that's something. But clearly there is a lot of those standards, like say for bonds, there's ICMA standard for green bond and social bond, and for loan, there's LMA standard as well. So we have kind of global standards trying to prevent those green washing type of customers as well. And there's other standards coming up, and increasingly they are attached with many research-based data. So like science-based target or some other quantitative target. So market is going to the right direction, but there will be some gap in between. So you can see that green bond will be popular one day, then actually losing interest, then going up again and down. So I think that for me, that's healthy development.
Thank you. Are there any other questions in the room or online? Yes, please.
Good afternoon, can you hear me? My name is Rafa Lepo. I work for the Dutch Embassy in Korea. I can indeed confirm that ING is a Dutch bank. Thank you very much for the presentation, but thank you very much for all presentations. Has been very insightful. I have a dilemma that I would like to bring forward, mostly thanks to the presentations of Mark and Louise. As a Dutch government, we are being approached all over the world, but also from Korean banks, for instance, by financial institutions that would be willing to invest our country in green projects. On the one hand, we have the capacity as a quite a rich country to finance these projects ourselves. On the other hand, free money or other investors is always very nice if they are willing to invest in green projects in your country. And then we could use these public funds to encourage other projects in the country, for instance, reduce fossil fuel subsidies or etc. If I would give you the dilemma, what should the Dutch government do? Should we allow, for instance, Korean banks to invest in green projects, or should we gratefully thank them and suggest them they would invest in other green projects elsewhere in the world where maybe their money might be even more needed?
Maybe I can share some of Koreans' thinking why they want to invest in Dutch project, even though there is other opportunities. Because in my previous background, we always think about we invest and learn together. So maybe that's the one reason why we are choosing more developed country, especially for sustainability. So even if, for example, IRR is same for Dutch and some other countries, we would consider those kind of intangible value we can get by analyzing the project and working with Dutch people and learn from them as well. So maybe that's one area that they are thinking about as well. But I also agree with you that you can actually introduce Korean banks or financial institutions to invest in other projects apart from Dutch. They might not be aware of that, especially, I'm not sure, just for example, for some East European country, they might not be that familiar with this compared to like the Southeast Asia or something. So maybe you can introduce and co-invest together as well. Yeah, so it depends on, which approach you will create more impact overall. So.
Mark or Heather, do you have any insights on that or opinions?
I mean, I don't think I can solve your dilemma. I guess it's not maybe directly related to the question, but just thinking in the context of Article 6, because EU countries are not allowed to use ITMOs to meet the EU NDC. But I think there are other options. So, for example, 2 of our major Article 6 programs here are funded by EU countries, so Sweden and Germany. And so I think, there's a big potential to, support greater mitigation in countries where there's no finance available to do that. So in a lot of GGGI member countries, for example. So yeah, I mean, it's not quite related to your question. It's not really something that I have much sort of expertise in, but just, I wanted to give that perspective on sort of what EU countries could do, for example, in the Article 6 space.
Yeah, Heather. Just to shortly add on to that, also, I wouldn't be the person to solve your dilemma. But previously, before joining SFOC, I was working in climate change adaptation. But nowadays, you see, like during my past experience, you see so many people, organizations, and countries wanting to put a lot of money on ODA funds or help some kind of green project. But it's very difficult for a person, organization, country to validate what green is. And it has been the issue like throughout the history, and still I think it's ongoing. But as I think Louise mentioned, if there is a way that you can do it in a joint project, it would be helpful for them and I think yourselves and the recipient as well.
Thank you, Heather. Are there any other questions in the room? Or yes, please. So we've got a question coming in from online, from Rwanda, Proteus from APEFA, an NGO, who would like to ask whether it is possible or whether ING not only does things related to sustainable finance in the countries that they're based, but do they also do activities or make partnerships with NGOs or other organizations in developing countries as well?
Okay, so I'm only familiar with APEC countries. So like for some countries that we don't have branch, we are still having project there. So in that case, me or my colleague in Singapore, they will be talking about those projects. So then the project owner will be somewhere based in other APEC countries. So it is not impossible, but honestly, it's also true that we don't have a lot of those kind of link and expertise in those countries. So if there is any project in there, I think like partnership with domestic bank would be more feasible way. But I'm not sure about Rwanda exactly, but yeah, I'm sure there will be some kind of way, or there might be some way. I heard that like banks can also jointly invest in with other like more like NGO type of investments, such as like Global Climate Fund or some other areas. So it can be those like partnership together as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Luis. So in the interest of time, I would like to thank the first set of panelists. Thank you very much for your insights and perspective on how we can accelerate these transitions towards net zero. And we will go for a short break and come back soon, approximately 10 minutes. So yeah, I will let you rest for a while and we will come back. Thank you.
저희가 이제 한국 정부 이 세대에도 잘 모르는 게 있는데 어떤 생각하셔가지고 일반 대출 저희 쇼핑팀도 따로 여기도 만났어요. 아 진짜요? 네 기억나요. 그러니까 약간 좀 프로덕트
Okay, so welcome back. Just for if there are any new joiners or for the people that are here today, this is the second session for today's roundtable on Together to Net Zero. On this second session, we will hear about specific efforts and activities from different countries to achieve low emission development pathways. First, we will hear from government efforts to either develop long-term low-emission development strategies and to develop programs to basically spark investments to achieve these development strategies. And then we will hear from entrepreneurship programs and from actual entrepreneurs on how their companies are working towards decarbonizing their respective economies in different sectors, the energy sector, food production sector, food markets, etc. So we will have a mix of panelists. Some of them are joining online. And I would like to invite Dugong Boon. He's lead of the Circular Economy and Trust Fund Coordinator at the Global Green Growth Institute, to take the floor and start telling us more about these lessons learned and knowledge.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you for having me today. So some diffusion several ways. So usually I recommend them just DJ. So the opportunity to present about KGNF is very long. It's a Korean Green Deal Fund. So actually it's good funding they're given from the Korean Ministry of the Finance. So it's a Korean Ministry of the Economy and Finance. So actually there are several ways. I was asked to present about the perspectives how a government to enhance its global cooperation with other countries, especially how they can cooperate with the international organization like a GGGI to enhance the global green growth across the other countries. So, next one, yeah, I should move it. Okay, so 2 years ago, we had the good agreements with the Korean governments, the Korean Ministry of the Economy and the Finance, regarding the providing the funding and also consultation to our member and partner countries regarding green growth. So about what will be difference between Green Deal, Green growth, right? So it's sometimes very confused, but in the sense of how we can maximize the green growth as like some economic growth engine. To make the kind of frameworks, we need a very holistic approach to enhance its policy framework. And also, we need to provide a very high quality of the technical consultation. So the financing development as well. So sometimes we need to the help in their capacity building. So ways. So based on our previous experience, the Korean government was very happy to work with us and provide us quite good the scale of the funding source is about the level. So the Korean wants 6 billion Korean won every year for 5 years. So with this funding, actually, so we provide our professional consultation to develop bankable projects and overall GCF projects in our member and partner countries. But sometimes many countries want to have the better policy framework, and also they need their capacity building. So especially regarding as the market pointed out today, when they want to have the carbon trading mechanisms, the network should be the enhancing of policy framework. So in this case, we are willing to support the kind of the niche and demands. So the target area actually is aligned with our programming solution, which include renewable energy efficiency, mobility, green buildings in industry, nature-based solution, and circular economy. Yeah, so with this the sector, actually we have the several achievements, and today I want to introduce just three of them. The first one is like the energy infrastructure development in India. Actually, it's a very ambitious infrastructure because we introduced a floating solar project in India, which is more difficult to apply than the land-based solar project. And actually, this area has the increasing land cost, so that in order to meet their renewable energy goal, they needed to use the water reservoir as the place to have the renewable energy. But the floating solar solution is very difficult compared to the land-based solar energy because of this is a technical difficulty. And so that we use this KGGI funding source to provide our technical consultation, but also the financial consultation as well to enhance its bankability and also the financial viability, so that we succeed to have the private investment commitments in the project. And right now it is undergoing well. But also infrastructure in development is very important. But in order to have the infrastructure development, we need the money, right? So fortunately, we have the bank like I'm sorry. ING, I'm sorry. I become so little nervous. So as she mentioned about the green bonds, it is very important to have the good scale of the finance to provide the the flows to this kind of infrastructure development. And we had the chance to work with the Mexico, especially NAFIN, which is Mexico's second largest national development bank. They want to have the USD 1 billion worth of the bonds by end of the 2023. And on them, they want to have the sustainable the bond to finance the new green projects in the countries to have to contribute into the Mexico post-COVID economy recovery. And we provide our financial consultation to the bank, and then we succeed to the contributing is the first issue of the sustainable bond in Mexico. And also, we have been working with the Africa, and it's a very unique approach because compared to Mexico's the green bond, it is a the country approaches. So there is very specialized infrastructure development financial group named the Africa Finance Corporation (AFC). As we have the very emerging economies in many Africa countries, and also they have a lot of the population emerging now, they have the very high demands in the green infrastructure development. But in many cases, the green infrastructure has a very high risk to be invested. So that we have a very good agreements with the GCF to provide their financial support to the Africa countries as a junior equity, which is like a very unique the positioning of the funding the structure to absorb a higher portion of the risk through the fund. So that because the GCF they're willing to absorb that kind of the risk, so that the AFC succeeds to mobilize the commercial the financing funds, and then they combine them to have the bigger scale of the funding, named the Infrastructure Climate Resilience Fund. So we are very happy with this to provide this kind of financing the opportunities in the Africa as well. So as you can see in our cases, it's very amazing to see the one countries can extend its impact, the green impact to other countries through working with the international organizations like us. And we want to use the kind of the experience and opportunities to extend our the impact further with other countries as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay. It's very interesting to see how the Korean Green New Deal Fund, it's financing and enabling all these investments for low carbon, and to see how GGGI has managed to implement such interesting projects in many countries and in many regions. Keeping up with the government perspective of actions that we can do to accelerate this transition to low carbon economies and reach net zero targets, I would like to invite Abbas Mohammed from the Ministry of Planning and Development of Ethiopia to give us a little bit of their perspective on how was the process of developing a long-term, low-emission development strategy. He is joining online. So I don't know, if the technical team can help me log him in. Okay, apparently he is having a little bit of technical problems, so we will skip to the next panelist. So now we will hear some of the specific examples of how entrepreneurship can trigger these low carbon emission development pathways and how they are supporting on each of their respective countries. So I would like to invite Esther Bates, project manager of the Pacific Green Entrepreneurs Network project from the Global Green Growth Institute, to take the floor and share some of her lessons learned from this entrepreneurship program. Esther, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Diana, and colleagues joining virtually and in person. It's my pleasure to join you this evening from Suva in Fiji. Just hoping you can hear me okay. Hopefully the internet will be all right. So as mentioned, I'm managing a project in the Pacific called the Pacific Green Entrepreneurs Network. And my team and I are really passionate about supporting green entrepreneurs with really great ideas to solve climate and environmental challenges more broadly, and helping them to take the next step to grow their impact and creating green jobs at the same time. So first, a little bit about the project. So it's a 3-year project, and it's funded by the Qatar Fund for Development. And it's aimed at catalyzing innovation and entrepreneurship in the private sector in the Pacific region, to help build up the Pacific solutions to Pacific challenges that are unique to the region. And also to contribute to the region's climate change adaptation, mitigation, and more broadly other development goals as well. So the project operates in 6 countries. For those not too familiar with the region, I've got a little map on the screen. So I'm based in Fiji. We also cover Kiribati, Papua New Guinea, Samoa, Tonga, and Vanuatu. And these countries are the small islands, but they're in a very large Pacific Ocean. And in total, these countries have a combined population of around 10 to 12 million people. So unique challenges. So the project, we have a green and inclusive jobs focus, and we're committed to prioritizing women, youth, and other marginalized groups. And in particular, youth unemployment in this region is really a huge problem. I think before the statistics are, not always up to date, but about 23% is what we understand is the youth unemployment in this region, which is significantly higher than the global average. So I've been asked to speak to some of the challenges of young entrepreneurs in the region, and certainly there are many. But I'd like to mention a few that we're also trying to address in the project. We certainly are trying to address lack of access to education, training, and opportunities to become an entrepreneur, to develop skills to enable setting up a business. Access to finance is a massive one for any entrepreneur, and particularly those challenges are exacerbated for young entrepreneurs. And I think in this region, and probably not just in this region, social norms and confidence, particularly for young people, is often quite is something that it's hard to build up. Young people are often expected to stay quiet, not to and to obey the instructions of the elders rather than taking a positive, taking their own actions in their own hands. And of course, government policy, there are certainly challenges with government policy as well. So PGen, Pacific Green Entrepreneurs Network, this project was developed to build on the Global Greenpreneurs Program. I believe we'll be hearing from one of our Greenpreneur alumni from the Global Program later, which is exciting. And so, yeah, I'd like to now just move on to a little bit about what we've been doing in this program. On the next slide, please. Great, so just a few highlights that we're currently doing. The project has three main pillars, I suppose. We run an incubator program and an accelerator program, and we also think it's really important to contribute to the wider growth of the entrepreneurship ecosystem in the region as well. So with our incubator program, which is what is the Global Greenpreneurs Program has been tailored to the region. We've run 3 cohorts of the incubator program so far, with the third one wrapping up at the moment. And we have had a total of 214 green startups, or green businesses across 6 countries participating in a mix of in-country workshops, online webinars and training, group and individual coaching, mentoring and networking to help them build their business ideas into viable, sustainable and impactful green business models. And at the end of the program, they were all able to compete in a business plan competition with 20 winners across the cohort and across the 6 countries, winning $5,000 as seed grant funding to help their, basically to make their dreams a reality or to take their businesses to the next step. So far, we've been very happy to say that over 50% of our participants in the program are youth, and also about 60% are women. And many of these are already creating valuable green jobs for young people in the region as well. The accelerator program is more aimed at growth stage, more mature businesses. And we're running that program for the first time this year. And we provide specialized technical assistance and mentoring, masterclasses, networking and investor connections as well. We are in the process of doing the first tranche of repayable grant funds over the next couple of months of between $10,000 to $50,000, which will really help to accelerate business growth for green businesses across the countries as well. And more broadly, the entrepreneurship ecosystem is really important, and I'm really glad, this, for example, panels such as this, raising visibility of entrepreneurship as a way of tackling and helping the private sector has a lot to bring to innovation and to support green growth and action on climate change. And so to be on this panel also with colleagues representing private sector and government is really excellent. So likewise in the Pacific, we also see it's really important for us to convene regional and national institutions as partners. We share knowledge and also raise awareness of entrepreneurship as a viable career option, which for many, they don't even consider that when they leave school and are just basically looking for employment instead. So actually last week we just had a really large event which we co-hosted with another 6 organizations, including the United Nations Development Program, Capital Development Fund, an International Labour Organization, to have a regional entrepreneurship expo, which was a really exciting 2-day knowledge sharing and capacity building event. I think it showed a lot of enthusiasm and interest in the space of entrepreneurship more broadly, but particularly also on the green space. So I think if we could just move to the last slide, I've just got a couple of, we're talking about today we're here to celebrate blue skies and moving towards net zero. So I'd just like to share a couple of the entrepreneurs that we're supporting through our program. So apologies that they're all men. but I thought these were the best youth that we have in the program to sort of mention how their work is contributing towards this topic. So Matej on the left, he runs basically a solar products. He offers solar products to regions in Kiribati, which many outer islands don't have access to electricity at all. So even having small home solar kits has a really huge impact on the way of lives of people, presents job opportunities, creates a safer environment, and also, of course, is a replacement for other energy sources such as kerosene and that kind of thing as well. He was already employing 5 staff in his business. They're all youth, and he's really passionate about developing the skills of all of them as young entrepreneurs as well in their own right. He's one of our incubator winners and also a current accelerator participant. Maybe I'll just mention Aliki in the middle from Fiji is setting up Fiji's first bike share business. And he's really excited to bring in the first batch of bicycles into the region with the grant that he received from us earlier in the year. And the last guy on the right, Ezekiel from Papua New Guinea, is the founder of Litfuel, which is a biomass startup in Papua New Guinea, who provide basically an alternative with pellets to wood fire cooking, which is basically a sustainable, clean and alternative cooking fuel. And of course, it's the cooking firewood as the alternative is very hazardous to health and the environment. So he's able to provide basically a greener and healthier alternative using sawdust and wood chips. So these are just a couple of examples of people who have already got great ideas to address the issues of addressing clean skies, but also net zero. We have plenty of other businesses who we're continually inspired by in the program, and I'm just happy to share a few of them with you. And with that, maybe I'll pass back to Diana.
Thank you, Esther. So keeping up with the examples of successful small and medium companies that can trigger this transition, I would like to give the floor to Jovi Gil Montajes, founder and CEO of Light of Hope. Jovi, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Just waiting for the slides to come up. Hi, I am Jovi from the province of Cebu in the Philippines, and I'm here to share with you the Light of Hope Philippines clean energy initiatives. We are a social enterprise that aims to build resilient and sustainable communities and to help mitigate climate change through the use of sustainable, clean, and renewable energy technologies. On the next slide, we will see that there are 2 main problems that we wanted to help address. First is the energy poverty. In the Philippines, there are close to 2.4 million Filipino households without access to electricity. And this is mostly because of poverty and because Philippines is an archipelago comprised of about 7,641 islands. And the underprivileged off-the-grid families are spending up to $30 per month to buy a kerosene gas and to pay for charging their mobile devices. The second problem is climate change, which is the biggest issue. As our global temperature keeps on rising, worldwide, we are all experiencing extreme weather events. And the Philippines has an average of 20 typhoons per year, with intensities that are getting stronger and stronger. We also personally experienced this in December of 2021, when our community was hit by Super Typhoon Rai. It was a very scary experience. We stayed in our room, holding hands with my wife and kids, praying. As the Super Typhoon destroyed our roof and rainwater started getting inside the house. Hearing the wind whistle and banging noise everywhere, still, we are blessed that we survived that calamity. On the next slide, to help address these problems, we develop our solar cloud grid solutions. This provides 24/7 clean energy access for efficient lighting and mobile charging. One cloud grid unit can also help reduce 130 kilograms of CO2 emissions per year. Also, the cost on repair, replacements, and maintenance of these units is also covered. And it is like your Netflix, but for clean energy access. On the next slide, after deploying our first few units, we have received a lot of requests from more families who wants to enjoy the same benefits. So for us to help fund our project, we joined hundreds of competitions. And we were blessed to win at least 6 of them, which includes the Greenpreneurs program of the Global Green Growth Institute. And the latest and biggest win so far, in partnership with the GGGI Philippine Country Office, is the BIMP IAGA ROK Cooperation Fund, or BKCF. We were blessed to have been selected as one of the projects in their second call of proposals. On the next slide, we can see that through the BKCF program, we will be able to deploy a total of 1,000 solar cloud grid units, which will positively impact the lives of 5,000 people in the islands of Surigao del Norte in Mindanao. And once the project is complete in 2 years, it will help reduce 130 tons of CO2 emission per year. On the next slide, we will see that as of this writing, we were able to help reduce 22,203.10 kilograms of CO2 emissions. And that is directly and positively impacting the lives of 1,185 people. On the next slide, we will see that our first target milestone is to serve more than 1,000 households in Cebu, Bohol, and Mindanao Island communities, which will directly and positively impact the lives of more than 5,000 people. And environmentally, it would help reduce more than 130 tons of CO2 emissions per year. And looking forward to the future, in the next slide, we plan to add additional projects in our pipeline, which is needed and very important to the communities that we serve. First is the sustainable emergency communication systems, which can operate even when the power grid or the cell towers are down. You would be able to connect to the internet to ask for help, assistance, and provide update on the situation, especially during calamities. Second would be sustainable vertical aeroponic farming for foods. And third is the e-bangka, or it's a solar and battery powered small fishing boats for our fishermen. Once again, thank you very much for this opportunity. Keep on sharing the light and be a light hero. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jovi. And our final example of a successful company, I would like to invite Kim Minha to tell us about her experience. She is the CEO of Refubian. Kim, the floor is yours.
Hello, I'm Kim from Hopkins College, and I'm a student from university and the CEO of startup team Refubian. In the summer of 2020, I saw a video. It was a video of a suffering from a straw stuck in its nose. At that moment, I looked back on how I had affected the environment And soon after, I thought I should change my lifestyle in a way that does not harm the environment as much as possible. In order to do that, the first step I had to take was to be well aware of climate and environment related issues. That was how I first met Climate Change Center and Climatus College, where I could get to learn in depth about the ongoing environmental crisis. Climatus College is the youth network of the Climate Change Center. It serves as a platform to raise awareness on climate change among future generations who are victims, but at the same time, key holders to climate crisis. The network's name carries a unique meaning. The word climatus is derived from Homo climatus, which signifies humanity adapting to changing climate. The term college, which originally was used to describe community of peers, incorporates the meaning of university for all, where we can realize what we have learned throughout our lives. Among the several programs, I participated in two of them. First was the SGI Youth Plus program, which I took part in last year, and through which I could discover my business item. And on the same line, this year, I am a part of Youth Savers, through which I established our company's philosophy. Let me introduce each program and my experiences in more detail. SGI Youth Plus is a program that supports students to independently plan and carry out climate crisis response activities through education, mentoring, and hands-on experiences. Our team created magazines to raise awareness on leftover agricultural products due to overproduction. During this program, we visited agricultural sites and surveyed approximately 300 consumers. At last, we got to the conclusion that dealing overproduced agricultural waste can be possible through market mechanisms. This year, I am continuing my involvement in the Climatus College through Youth Savers. About 30 students interested in climate crisis response serve the role of Youth Savers each year. Working with them made me think about the life that I should be pursuing and the ways I can contribute to help relieve the current climate crisis. In that sense, Youth Savers has been giving me powerful insights and the motivation to proactively be engaged in climate change issues. While participating in those programs, I hold the story of an entrepreneur who owns a vegan bakery that uses surplus agricultural products. This made me realize that an international cooperation may not be the only solution for issues such as climate crisis, environmental conservation, and waste disposal. Acknowledging that, at that moment, I came up with a business addressing the problem of surplus agricultural waste disposal. In that sense, I started a business supplying surplus agricultural products to small restaurant owners. Instead of receiving commissions, we provide them with information on agricultural products and sales channels. We also operate internal communities to improve awareness on surplus agricultural products and try to expand our boundary to nearby inhabitants and general consumers as a whole. I was able to various programs while starting a business, such as a farm visit, consumer interview, visiting fairs, awareness improvement booth, exhibition booth, and a startup lecture. I personally am very proud of what I'm doing today. This is a green job that I can contribute to the protection of the environment and ecosystem, and also a social business through which I can take responsible actions for the society as an entrepreneur rather than solely seeking profit. By doing so, I am fulfilling my vision to contribute to the society, which makes me feel even more rewarding. To address climate crisis, it is crucial for the younger generation to actively participate, express their opinions clearly, and take actions. The uncertainty the young generation are facing may be unstable, but that is what makes it more exciting. As I started from a student who saw a video of a suffering turtle by chance and eventually became a business owner taking sustainable actions through an unexpected journey, the possibility youth has may be more incredible than expected. Throughout this journey, I will stay focused and do my best to achieve my goals within the climate crisis field. Along the way, I believe that the knowledge and courage I gained from Climatus College have made great sinners, being the motivator for future climate actions that I will be taking. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Min. These are all very inspiring stories of how a small business can make a change. And in the interest of time, I would like to thank all the panelists for this second session. And I would like to close this event. I hope these sessions have helped you raise the awareness and inspire you on how we can accelerate this transition towards a low carbon development pathways. Thank you.